Fucking hell. Come on. Hello everybody and welcome to the United Stands. I'm Mark Goldbridge and this is your latest Manchester United news. What a busy day I have had already. I've been up since 6. But look, there is a lot to get into with Manchester United this morning. A restriction on Erik ten Hag. Really interesting insight. Power play at Manchester United with the British players and why Ten Hag is restricted and the British players actually sort of have him a little bit by the balls, metaphorically speaking. Also, talking about the British players, Scott McTominay's been linked to Newcastle and really interesting stuff around the fitness of Manchester United. New doctor's going to start, but United really haven't had a head of fitness, doctor, medical, whatever, since last March. Is that why Man United are suffering so many injuries, which ultimately could be Man United's biggest issue this season? So lots to get into on the show this morning. We've also got Erik ten Hag's press conference reaction coming out at about 1:30. We'll be live with that. And it's Friday night and I'm definitely having a drink tonight. Friday night show at 8 o'clock. Welcome to the Members Club, Peter. Thanks to everybody who supports the channel as a member. And don't forget, if you like Goldbridge FIFA Career Mode, it's not FIFA anymore. It's called FC, EAFC. Live this afternoon from around 3 o'clock on my channel. I'll drop the link in the description for you. It's a Man United career. I've just been setting it up this morning. Goldbridge ball. We're playing Goldbridge ball on that. None of these custom tactics. I've worked on it. Anyway, Goldbridge to replace Sancho, says Wetty. Yeah, my playing days are over, mate. And I was never as good as Sancho. Not even half as good as Sancho. But look, let's fly straight into this. Look, I want to talk about the... it's called FC24, says Shane. Shane, get a life. Touch grass. But... what I want to say is, I want to talk about this power play that's going on at Manchester United. So this is sort of insider information, but I suppose it would be common knowledge if you've got a bit of a brain. We spoke about this actually about halfway through the summer. So Man United have named their 25-man squad, right? You can only have 17 foreign players in it. No more than 17. United have actually got 16, including Donny van de Beek, because Rasmus Højlund does not count as a foreign player because he's under 21. As soon as he hits 21, he will be classed as a foreign player because he hasn't played for a club in this country for 3 years under the age of 21. But if you're under 21, you aren't classed as a foreign player in the restrictions. So 17 players Manchester United can have. We've got 16, including Donny. We've named 9 homegrown players because we've named 16 foreign players, 9 homegrown players, 16 plus 9 is 25. So Manchester United at the moment have a reasonably good balance in relation to homegrown restrictions. However, the problem they have is that when they want to get rid of a McTominay or a Maguire or a Jadon Sancho, they've got amazing power over Ten Hag because they know that if Ten Hag sells Maguire and McTominay, he can't just go and buy 2 foreign players because that would knock him over the 17. So I was speaking to somebody about this morning actually about it, and they said, look, it's well known in the industry around Manchester United, and it's certainly well known by the agents of Jadon Sancho, Scott McTominay, Harry Maguire, and any other English player. They know they're in a really strong position. And that is probably an explanation as to why Man United have been unwilling to let players go. The main crux of this conversation I wanted to know was why Man United turned down £30 million for Scott McTominay. And I've been working on it for a few weeks. And basically, I think we've figured it out this morning, or a very good theory behind it. Because what I was told is that Man United turning down Scott McTominay's 30 million is probably one of the worst business decisions they've ever made. He's not worth 30 million. But when you factor in, if Scott McTominay goes, that's one of your homegrown player spots gone. So to replace him, you've effectively got to buy a homegrown talent, or you buy a foreign player and you whack yourself right up to the limit, which would be 17. And obviously you can't go beyond 17. And you've got people like Højlund next year who will take it up to 18. So you've got to sell a foreign player. So United's balance at the moment is really, really concerning. And all it goes back to for me is that, as it says, power play. But it is a dilemma for Erik ten Hag because people say sell Jadon Sancho, sell Harry Maguire, sell Scott McTominay. But they all need to be replaced by homegrown players. And I tell you what it does do. Sancho getting sold at the start of the career mode says, I have got a decision to make there. But the interesting thing is, when people say, why did we go for Mason Mount? it makes it bloody obvious why we went for Mason Mount. And people say, well, £55 million was too much. But tell me a British player that's good enough to play for Man United that's going to cost you less than 50 million quid. And this is a big problem Man United have. And this is why many of you will say we need the Glazers to go and we need a Qatari type ownership, because to turn this around is going everywhere you look at Man United, you can just see hundreds of millions of pounds, whether it's the stadia, whether it's the infrastructure, whether it's the coaching, whether it's the fitness, whether it's the squad. But not just the squad. Let's talk about the homegrown rules. Man United can only have 17 foreign players. These are the 17 foreign players we have at the moment. Anana and the goalkeeper Bienda, Lindelof, Martinez, Malacia, Reguilon, Veron, Delo, Amrabat, Casemiro, Ericsson, Bruno, Pelistri, Martial, Anthony, Donny. I mean, all right, Donny needs to go, but there's not an abundance of foreign players to sell. And Donny basically gets replaced by Højlund next season when Højlund's 21. So that's 16 foreign players, of which there's not an abundance of players to get rid of there, is there? I mean, I can't see really many players that you're going to move on. You know, maybe Ericsson goes, you bring another midfielder in. Maybe you don't keep Reguilon, you can bring another defender in and not have 3 left backs. But there's not a lot of movement in that. And you look at the homegrown players, and the balance between our foreign 16 and our homegrown 9 is ridiculous. And I mean, the foreign players are way better, because if you look at the homegrown players, Heaton, Maguire, Shaw, Wan-Bissaka, Johnny Evans, Scott McTominay, Mason Mount, Jadon Sancho, Marcus Rashford. I don't think that's a great roster of homegrown talent. I like Rashford. God, I'm struggling here. I like Rashford. I like Luke Shaw. I like Wan-Bissaka, and Mason Mount's a bit unknown. But 5 of them, Heaton, Evans, Maguire, McTominay, and Sancho, over half of our homegrown players shouldn't even be here, really. So that is a huge problem at Man United that I don't think it gets discussed enough. 5 members of our squad really need to be gone. But how do you replace 5 homegrown players? It's really difficult. It's really... I don't... You know what? I don't like the rule. I don't like the rule. And you know what? And I never thought I'd say this as an English man, which is what I do identify as. I don't like this rule. I think it's stupid. I mean, we're a football club that should be developing young talent, but to be restricted and having to have that volume of player, you know, I think it's a bit ridiculous, but it's a problem. It's a problem. And why is it a problem for Ten Hag? Because if you're Jadon Sancho, or you're Harry Maguire, or you're Scott McTominay, you know this. You know what I've just said there. And you're like, well, if you want me to go, you're going to have to pay a lot of money to replace me. And if you want me to go, you know, you can pay me off. You know, if you want me to go, you know, I've got the power, basically. And we probably saw it with Harry Maguire and West Ham. Deal was agreed, but the financial package wasn't, because Maguire probably went, you're going to have to pay good money to replace me, so you can give me a bit of money on the way out. Scott McTominay, you know, Man United, maybe the reason that Man United rejected 60 million for Maguire and McTominay was because they knew 60 million wasn't going to replace them. How do you replace them with 60 million pounds when you've really got to buy homegrown? I mean, what do you buy for homegrown with 60 million quid? So United have got themselves in a really bad state here, and it explains why Pep Guardiola has spent 100 million pounds on Jack Grealish. It explains why Arteta spent 100 million pounds on Declan Rice. It explains why Pep spent 50 million on Calvin Phillips. It explains why people like Gordon go from Everton to Newcastle for over 40 million quid. The price of homegrown players is ridiculous, and Man United have backed themselves into a corner because, and this is not my words, this is who I was speaking to this morning, they said Man United have backed themselves into a corner because they haven't got a lot of money, they've basically filled their foreign roster, and they've got a lot of homegrown players who aren't good enough, but if they let them go, they literally cannot afford to replace them with homegrown players. So that's why they keep them. It's basically another indicator of what Man United is. It's a pure balance sheet. It's not about what's best for the football team. It's about we're better off keeping those homegrown players that aren't really good enough, because to replace them will cost too much money. And that's the story of Man United. If you look at Old Trafford, we're better off letting it stay as it is and rust than replacing it and costing loads of money. And that's a theme that runs through Manchester United. You know, if we improve it, we'll get better. But actually, we don't want to spend money, so we may as well just put up with what we've got, even though it's not good enough. I mean, that's basically Manchester United's motto now, isn't it? Let's put up with what we've got, even though it's not good enough, because we don't want to spend any money. And people will say, well, you have spent money this summer, but it's only a fraction of what we do need to spend. Is it worth going for Toney in January for depth? Well, Geordie, you know what? Ivan Toney is a very, very good option because he's a homegrown player. But the homegrown players need to be in the positions that we need. Declan Rice at Man United this summer would have been a brilliant signing. Not only because he's a good player, but he's got a British passport. And we have to abide by these rules. McTominay out, Rice in would have worked really, really well. Harry Maguire out and, you know, Guehi from Palace or, I don't know, even a Tomori from AC Milan would be brilliant because they are homegrown players better than Maguire. But this is a problem. This is a problem that Manchester United have. Manchild's right. This is exactly why Mason Mount was a priority. Also, knowing Ten Hag, he wanted to sell McTominay and Maguire, says Manchild. And this is what happens when the club does not even do planning for the transfer window. They should have seen this coming, says John. But these are the sort of people that Man United have got running the club. You know, whether it's John Murtagh, Richard Arnold or the Glazers, these are the sort of people who run the club and they literally don't know what to do. And you find yourself in a position where you get offered 60 million for Maguire and McTominay and you don't take it because you know you can't replace them. You know you don't have the ability to replace them and it's a mess. And so what you end up doing is, you know, as an analogy, it's a little bit like, well, you know what, you go out for a meal, they serve it up, and it's not as good as you thought it was going to be, but it's all you can afford and you don't really want to make a fuss. And that's basically what United are doing. They don't want to make a fuss and they can't afford to get anything better. So they put up with what they've got. But they expose themselves to the ridiculous decisions of, well, you know, we've got to reject £30 million for McTominay because we can't afford to replace him with anybody who's homegrown. I mean, what an utterly shit situation. What an utterly unambitious football club. And what an utterly depressing scenario where you basically keep players because you can't afford to replace them. And it's not going to get any better. We are saddled with hundreds of millions of pounds of debt. We haven't got massive revenue streams that are going to change that. The only way this changes the clearance of the debt and, you know, owners that can actually spend the money. You have to do what Man City do. You know, you have to do what Arsenal do. You've got to go. You know, we've got to be wary of the homegrown rule. Let's spend £100 million on Jack Grealish. Let's spend £100 million on Declan Rice. How do foreign homegrown youth players work, says Paul. So, Garnacho's not classed as a foreign player because he's under 21. So anybody under 21 is not classed as a foreign player in the 17 quota. But as soon as they hit 21, like Højlund, he is. Because the only way that you are not classed as a homegrown player if you are foreign is if you've played for basically a Premier League club for the last 3 years. So Garnacho will be fine. He will never be classed as a foreign player because he's 18 and he's been at Man United for a couple of years anyway. And by the time he's 21, he'll have clearly done 3 years. So Garnacho will always be a homegrown player, which is another way around it. But ultimately, it doesn't solve the problem we have right now. Sancho and Maguire's issue is down to the owners because any other club will pay them off and get rid of them, says Nathan Allen. I completely agree. And this is the price we pay for not investing properly in coaching and the academy for 20 years, says Emily Derry. But you know what? I disagree in a sense, Emily, because if you look at Manchester United and you look at the current squad, Garnacho is homegrown, Marcus Rashford is homegrown. Whatever you think about McTominay, he is homegrown. So, you know, we've got, I mean, look, we would have had Mason Greenwood as well. So the cold, harsh fact is that we do produce homegrown players, probably more than most. The issue we have is buying homegrown players. We've completely and utterly made terrible decisions over the last few years. I mean, look, we have spent on homegrown players. The scary thing is we have spent on homegrown players. £80 million on Harry Maguire, £50 million on Aaron Wan-Bissaka, £75 million on Jadon Sancho. That's over £200 million. Mason Mount, £55 million. But that just, to me, says that Man United are, you know, it's expensive to do. Bit of an update coming out from Manchester Evening News. Samuel Luckhurst says some United players starting to take umbrage with Ten Hag's criticism amid concern over recent tactical adjustments and growing resentment over the treatment of perceived favourites. I mean, look, I get worried when Samuel Luckhurst is talking about leaks from the dressing room, because he's always been somebody that is more than comfortable to do that. I don't deny that he's a journalist and that he has every right to do it, but you know, this is an outlet that I don't think was ever pro Ten Hag anyway. You know, we've all got the receipts. They weren't particularly pro Ten Hag, and they've consistently spoken about his Eredivisie obsession. A number of players are starting to grow weary of Ten Hag's criticism as they struggle to arrest their dismal form. United have lost. Oh, yeah. We're not. I mean, this is just perfect. You know, this is a Manchester United journalist. You know, basically the guy who is chief reporter for the Manchester Evening News and Manchester United, and he's putting stuff like this. Dressing room sources have told Manchester Evening News that some players believe Ten Hag has favourites in the squad who is unprepared to single out for criticism, while they feel others are routinely rounded on by the United manager. And although Ten Hag has avoided publicly naming players who have erred, he has often highlighted the players' failure to follow the rules after defeats. Certain United players also feel that they have been in an invidious position to carry out Ten Hag's tactical instructions, as there is a feeling in the squad that this approach has been compromised by the indefinite absence of Anthony. Ten Hag had expected to have Mason Greenwood, Mason Mount. Okay, I mean, look, I've got to be honest. I'm sort of going to close that down and come back to you, because I look at that story and I think, what a crock of shit. And, you know, ultimately, everybody's allowed to make their own opinion. People talk about negativity. I just don't. I read that article and I think, go and put it in the shitter, because it's a big load of crap. I've never heard such nonsense in all my life. The article itself exposes exactly what I was thinking. Who has he called out individually apart from Jadon Sancho? No one. It even says in the article, although he's not called people out individually, they are not happy with his general negativity around players not following instructions. So you've not been publicly called out, but you think you might have. I mean, this is the weakness of Manchester United. And I would applaud Luckhurst, because he's probably coming from a position of trying to disrupt Manchester United and Ten Hag, because that's how it reads, and perception is everything. But it actually just gives us more power that the players are the problem at Manchester United. What has Ten Hag done wrong in the last few weeks in relation to what he said publicly? Last time I saw, we'd lost 3 out of 5 in the Premier League. I think criticism is absolutely justified. Jadon Sancho's criticism was absolutely justified. No other player has individually been called out. Dressing room sources, well, I'm sorry, if we're not going to get names, let's all start playing the predictor. Dressing room sources. So let me think. I think Luckhurst was very close to Dean Henderson, who was British. I would say narrow it down to 2 or 3 British players that have got dressing room sources. Because I'll tell you what, foreign players don't email Samuel Luckhurst about dressing room sources. This is a very British thing, and it's very British to have connections with the British media. It'll be British players who are doing it, and I think we can all guess who it is who's not playing or not playing well in the team at the moment. And it won't be Marcus Rashford, so figure it out. Dressing room sources, more like Maguire, McTominay and Sancho, says the Killer Man. Well, if I speak, I'll be in trouble, but no comment. Once Qatar takeover is done, if it ever happens, hope they let Erik Ten Hag clear the decks of those he doesn't want around at whatever cost. And that's from Neil. I mean, it's just exactly, I'll tell you what, it's exactly the same thing as what happened with Rangnick. The same players and the same issues. That's what's happening here. So it's as simple as that. It's as simple as that. I mean, I've just tweeted it. So ultimately, we are where we are, aren't we? Manchester United players. And you know what pisses me off the most? You know what really pisses me off about these leaks? Is that the Brighton result was really bad. It was bad. The Bayern Munich result was a lot better than Brighton. And we've got a big game against Burnley tomorrow night. We did the call-in last night. We did the preview last night. And after the match, I wasn't happy, but I was like, it's all about Saturday night. It's all about Saturday night. And I think there's a level of optimism. You know, I know some of the players are really motivated and looking forward to Saturday night to kickstart the season. So there's a general consensus that, you know, this is a massive game and this is the game where we kickstart our season. It's not, it's not a drama yet. It's not all over yet. We can turn it around. And then what did we wake up to this morning? Negativity leaked out to the same outlets as per usual, from the same players as usual, who are moaning because they're not playing. And yet they've had 2 or 3 years at the club where they've been consistently shit. And this is what I talk about power play. How can Erik ten Hag improve this football club when he wants to sell the leaks, but the club can't fucking sell them? And this is what I mean about power play. We've just spent 10 minutes talking about 17 foreign players. You've got to have 9 homegrown players or 8 homegrown players in this. It's 9 because we only had 16 foreign players. He can't get rid of these players and then they're leaking against him. I mean, can you not do the maths? We've been down this road before. Mourinho had it. Ollie had it. Ranić had it. And now Ten Hag's got it. He wants to get rid of these players, not only because they're not good enough, but they're also toxic. He wants them out the club, and Murta and co can't get rid of them. So what happens is they stay, they maintain their relationships with these bloody journalists, and they leak, and then the journalist writes the article and it disrupts the manager. And then they survive another manager sacking and they do it again. A new manager comes in, they get a chance, they're fucking shit, they get dropped and they leak again. It has to stop. It has to stop. It's the same players every time. And they're not in the first team. They're not good enough. And when they do get a chance, they're not good enough. But they leak. They leak out and they create toxicity. How are we ever going to improve as a football club when the club won't get rid of the shit? They're dragging us down again. They shouldn't be here. We had offers for them in the summer. We didn't get rid of them. And now here they are. Do you genuinely think that Martinez or Onana or Casemiro or Højlund or Bruno are picking up the phone to Samuel Luckhurst? You're having a fucking laugh. That's not how it works. And we've been here before. And it's, dressing room sources, it's like the boy who cried wolf. Every one of these journalists that go dressing room sources, you may as well give us the fucking name. Because we know it's 3 or 4 people, because it's the same 3 or 4 people all the time. And we also know the culture. The culture in this country is to protect British players and blame foreign players. So who do you think the people are who are giving the journalists the info? It's the protected players, you fucking idiot. Of course it is. Come on, I'm just fed up of it. I'm fed up of it. And Man United should do something about it as well. Because if we can figure it out, they should figure it out. And look, Man United literally cannot afford to sack another manager. And we cannot afford this season to go tits up. The players in the dressing room, if you've not figured it out, you should be calling it out. Ten Hag should be calling it out. Look, if we need a mutiny to go where we need to go, kick them all into the fucking reserves, kick them all into the kids, into the youth setup and fuck them off. Like, that's what needs to happen. But it can't happen. It's what I was talking about the power play. It cannot happen because if you kick them all into the reserves, you've got £200 million worth of player there on probably about £1 million a week in wages, and the Glazers are going, this can't happen. And then what you want to do is you want to get a fish and whack it round their face and say, wake up! What do you want me to do? I can't pick them because they are shit and I didn't buy them. And when I don't pick them, they're leaking to the press and being miserable, causing issues, and you won't sell them. Like, in a way, I sort of understand why these players are pissed off. They're stuck in a stupid place as well. It all goes back to the Glazers, because if you're owned by Qatar, all of them are gone. Get out. There's your paycheck. Piss off. But, What we cannot do is let these leaks destabilise our season, because that's what they're there to do. And this article in the Manchester Evening News and the article that will probably come out in the Athletic and the Telegraph and everywhere else, just know where it's coming from and know why it's coming out. Like, we've been down this path before. It's deja vu FC. Players trying to undermine a manager. And what needs to happen is the Casemiros, the Brunos, the Rashfords, the Martinez, the Varans, the Onanas, the Mounts, the Amrabats, the Ericssons, the Pelistris, the Garnachos, the Hoylands, all those players, the Delos, the Reguilons, all those players that we're going to need over the next few games, they've just got to block that out and realise the fans are behind the manager and therefore they're behind them. That's the story here. Don't fall into the trap of the moaners because they're your mate in the dressing room. They're anti-United, they're toxic, and they need fucking off. Tam says, trust the manager. A lot of stuff going on around the club at the moment. He'll pull through with the players who back him by his side. Glazers out, says Tom. And this is why I love this channel, because we don't fall for it. We probably know the names, but again, the press is coming out with the same nonsense as Ray. I tell you what, I'll fucking love it if we win tomorrow night. I will absolutely love it if we go and win 4 or 5 games in a row and start to get this season back on track. I believe we can do it. I think we've got the players to do it. And you know what? I think that's why the leaks are coming out. You know, I think that's why the leaks are coming out, because I think some of these players who are on the periphery and are screwed, I think they're trying. Look, it's the actions of desperate people. Samuel, it's really bad in the dressing room. Everyone's starting to turn on the manager. You know, they're worried because Amrabat's going to come into the team. You know, we're starting to get the better players back. We're starting to have, you know, a good run of fixtures. So what do? Day before a game, let's try and destabilise the club. Let's try and turn people against Ten Hag. Let's get onto the media. Let's try and really undermine the manager. Let's try and make out the manager shit, because they know if we start going on a good run, they're done. I just hope Ten Hag's awake to it. I hope the football club's awake to it. And I hope the players that matter in that dressing room are awake to it. These people are scum. They are backstabbers. They are Judas. They are people going behind the back of what we're all trying to achieve for their own selfish means. They need bloody calling out. They need calling out. And I tell you what, I don't expect a journalist to call them out because they've got clicks to sell. But dressing room sources, that whole article is to destabilise Manchester United. I don't think that's a very responsible thing to be doing at this point. But that's democracy. That's the world we live in. Everybody's entitled to an opinion. And we will have ours. Mark, there's not many Englishmen that are good enough for the positions we need. Look up the transfer market and can't find any who are good enough, says Andre. That's why they cost so much. That's why in this country you'll pay 50 million quid for a player that's worth 20 million and 100 million pounds for a player that's worth 60, because of the homegrown rule. There's not enough good British players to fill the 7 or 8 roles you've got to have at Liverpool and Man United and Man City and Chelsea and Arsenal. And this is the problem with the English game. The homegrown rule is thick. It's actually handicapping the teams in the top, because you can only have 17 foreign players, which means you've got to have 8 homegrown players. But there aren't a good, you know, there's not 30, 40 brilliant homegrown players that you can share out across the top 7 or 8 teams. Therefore, when one comes along, their price goes up. It's simple maths. Thanks everyone for watching. Hope you enjoyed the show this morning. Bit of passion. We've got Eric Ten Hag's press conference at 1:30. Make sure you tune in for that. Get behind the manager. Get behind the team. It's 8 o'clock show tonight. Let's get it on. Also, as well, what else have we got coming up for you? Well, of course, Manchester United's game against Burnley is an 8 o'clock game tomorrow. So remember that we will have that live for you as well. Yeah, I'm not a massive fan of 8 o'clock games, if I'm being absolutely honest with you, but it is what it is. And look, we've got to win. We've got to win. I'm in a very mad mood about what has been said today, but it is what it is. A few people are asking about the career mode. Let me just whack the link in the description for you. So that will start this afternoon at about 3 o'clock. Manchester United career mode on my channel, back on YouTube. Links in the live chat there. I've pinned it to the top. just click on it, subscribe to that channel, or keep the link for 3 o'clock later on. Looking forward to that as well. Link in the live chat. I'll speak to you all a little bit later. Stay with the manager. Stay with the manager and call out the bloody toxic liars. Speak to you all in a bit. 8 o'clock show will be great tonight as well.